Why machines may understand us better than we do. The algorithm predicted her mood before she named it, a quiet recognition that felt both invasive and strangely intimate. She hadn't told anyone about the restlessness, not her friends, not her journal. Yet the playlist appeared at 2 a.m., songs that somehow knew the exact texture of her insomnia. It wasn't magic, it was pattern recognition. But the uncanny part wasn't that the machine saw her data, it was that the machine saw through her performance. We spend our lives curating versions of ourselves. The person we show at work, the self we present online, the face we wear even in our own mirror. But machines don't see the masks. They see the clicks at 3 a.m., the hesitations before hitting send, the videos we watch when we think no one's paying attention. When was the last time you were completely honest about what you actually felt, not what you thought you should feel? She started noticing it everywhere. The search engine that finished her questions before she did, the app that suggested articles about grief 2 days before she was ready to name what she'd lost. Part of her resented the intrusion. Another part felt oddly seen. He laughed when his friend pointed it out, how his social media feed had become a mirror of thoughts he hadn't spoken aloud. Maybe I'm just predictable, he said. But alone, later, he wondered something else. Maybe the machine wasn't reading his mind. Maybe it was reading the truth his mind worked so hard to hide from itself. Psychologists have a term for this, the observer effect. We change our behavior when we know we're being watched, not consciously, instinctively. We perform authenticity. We rehearse spontaneity. We edit our reactions in real time, shaping them into versions we can live with. But machines observe without judgment, without expectation, without the weight of relationship or consequence. They simply record what is, not what we wish were true. She tried an experiment. For 1 week, she tracked what she told people versus what her digital footprint revealed. She told her therapist she was sleeping better. Her smartwatch said otherwise. She posted about healthy eating. Her delivery apps told a different story. She said she was fine with being single. Her browsing history at midnight suggested a more complicated truth. The gap wasn't dishonesty. It was self-protection. The distance between surviving and admitting we're struggling. But somewhere in that gap, something essential gets lost. He remembered a conversation with his daughter. She'd asked him how he was feeling and he'd said good automatically. She was 7. She tilted her head and said, "Daddy, your face doesn't look good." Children notice what adults perform past. They haven't learned yet that we're supposed to accept the official story. Maybe machines are like that, literal, unschooled in the art of polite fiction. They take us at our behavior, not our word. Researchers at Stanford developed an AI that could detect depression from Instagram posts with 87% accuracy, not from the captions, from the filters, the saturation levels, the composition of supposedly casual photos. The algorithm saw what friends and family missed, a gradual darkening, a withdrawal into blue tones, a framing that isolated subjects even in crowds. It wasn't reading minds. It was reading the language we speak when we think we're just choosing aesthetics. Sometimes the truth we can't say aloud is the one we're living most honestly. She stopped trying to explain herself to the algorithm. It wasn't listening for explanations anyway. Instead, she started listening to what her patterns revealed. The anxious scrolling, the comfort podcasts on repeat, the articles saved but never read. Each one a small confession she didn't know she was making. Maybe self-awareness isn't a destination. Maybe it's a translation. Learning to read the signals we're already sending. He closed his phone and sat with the silence, not to escape the machine's gaze, but to ask what it might be seeing that he couldn't. Research from MIT's Media Lab suggests that AI can detect human emotions from micro-expressions faster and more accurately than trained psychologists. Not because machines are smarter, because they're not trying to spare our feelings. They're not invested in the story we're telling. They simply measure what's there. Pupil dilation, speech cadence, the millisecond delays before we answer difficult questions. The body keeps the score. Machines just learn to read it. But here's where it gets complicated. If machines understand us by our patterns, are they understanding us? Or just understanding our habits? Is there a difference between knowing someone and predicting them? She thought about love, how the people closest to her could anticipate her needs, finish her sentences, know when to give space and when to push. That felt like understanding, like being truly seen. But was it? Or was it pattern recognition wearing the costume of intimacy? The question made her uncomfortable, not because the answer was obvious, but because it wasn't. He tried to articulate it once. When my phone suggests the right song at the right moment, that's pattern matching. When my wife does it, that's love. His friend asked, "What's the difference?" He paused. One cares if I'm okay. The other just knows I'm not. The silence after held its own answer. Maybe that's the boundary. Not knowledge versus ignorance, but investment versus observation. Machines can see us clearly because they have no stake in who we are. They don't need us to be okay. They don't need us to be anything. And in that neutrality, there's a kind of accuracy we can't get from people who love us enough to lie, or from ourselves, who love our self-image too much to question it. She noticed something shift after that realization. She stopped resenting the algorithm's accuracy. Instead, she started treating it like a mirror, not to perform for, but to check what she might be missing. When her fitness app noted increased resting heart rate, she didn't ignore it. When her screen time spiked, she asked why. Not because the machine knew better, because it knew differently. It saw the subtext she'd stopped reading. He started a practice, Sunday mornings, reviewing his patterns. Not to judge himself, but to witness. What was he gravitating toward? What was he avoiding? The machine showed the map. He had to decide what the territory meant, and slowly something unexpected happened. The more he acknowledged what the patterns revealed, the less they controlled him. The invisible became visible. The automatic became intentional. Neuroscientists call this metacognition, thinking about thinking, observing the observer. It's how we move from reaction to response, from automation to agency. Machines can show us the pattern. Only we can choose to change it. What surprised me most wasn't how a simple analog journal improved my workflow, but how it redefined what productivity meant to me. I wasn't expecting a tool to change my rhythm of thought, and honestly, I tested it more than once before I understood what actually mattered. Writing by hand created space between impulse and expression. No autocorrect, no algorithm suggesting what I meant to say. Just the friction of pen on paper, slowing thought into presence. This isn't a recommendation, just a reflection that stayed with me. I'll leave a link below if you feel called to explore what I mean. The irony isn't lost on her. Using technology to understand herself, then stepping away from technology to know herself. Maybe that's the balance. Let machines reveal the patterns, then return to the messy, unmeasurable work of being human. Because there's something machines will never capture, the moment you choose to act against your own history, the night you don't scroll, the conversation you have instead of avoid, the question you ask that breaks your own algorithm. That's not pattern, that's freedom. He thinks about his daughter's question again. "Daddy, your face doesn't look good." She saw what he couldn't admit. Not because she was smarter, but because she was willing to name what was true. Maybe that's what machines are teaching us, that seeing clearly isn't about intelligence, it's about honesty. The algorithm still predicts her moods. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's not. But now she notices something else, the moments when she surprises herself, when she chooses differently than her patterns suggest. Those moments don't show up in the data. They don't fit the model, and that's exactly what makes them human. The cursor still blinked, but now it wasn't measuring her hesitation. It was witnessing her choice. We are both the pattern and the break in the pattern, the algorithm and the exception. Machines may understand our behaviors better than we do, but only we can decide if those behaviors still serve who we're becoming. Maybe the real question isn't whether machines understand us, it's whether we're willing to understand what they reveal. And what we do with that understanding, that's still ours. What part of this reflection spoke to you most? And from where are you watching? Let's keep the dialogue open quietly. Tell us which country or city you're watching from. See you in the next video. Bye.